Today we're going to paint a watercolor rose. I'm going to give you the photograph to work from. So get ready, get your paint sweat. Let's get started. Here's the photograph, and you can screen capture this and use it for yourself. I like to use my own photographs, but I don't mind sharing them one bit. Now what I'm going to do is, this is an 8 by 8 inch piece of paper. It is a 20-inch brush for most of the demo. And the 20-inch brush is really big. It's almost, I want to say it's 2 inches wide. So it's a very wide brush. Now the point of that is because I want to use as few strokes as possible and simplify forms because that's something I'm interested in. And I'm making those dabs on the side because I want to determine what the values are compared to other values. So I put in my lightest lights first, which were the yellows, then shifted into orange. And every time I move my finger, I'm looking at an edge that I want to preserve and trying to figure out where that edge begins and where it ends. As the rose gets deeper, as you go deeper into the rose, it becomes darker. It's also darker on the left-hand lower part of the rose because that's where the sun is leaving a shadow. But I want to sneak up on this really slowly because I usually paint with my darkest darks first. But in a case like this, a flower form like this where I want to keep things delicate, and I don't think my rose ended up being delicate, but I just had no reference to choose from. My dark would have been completely arbitrary, and I didn't want to have, I'm really interested in color temperature right now. So I looked at the rose overall, studied it over a period of time and decided for myself that I felt that the rose was warm. Well, yeah, of course it's kind of warm because there's mostly oranges and yellows and reds, and so that's going to be warm. But that also meant that I had to be really careful about where it was cool. And where it was cool, normally I would gone into a very deep violet, but that would have been too big a stretch in terms of value and in terms of color. And so I've got to sneak up on it. I put a neutral where my darks are going to be for right now. I mixed that neutral up with a little bit of blue and the complement of that orange. But I know that's not where I'm going to stay. I just needed something soft and a placeholder. Now I'm looking at the darkest darks. Now, I don't hit this the first time, obviously, because normally when I paint, if I've calibrated things correctly by about now, when I put in my darkest darks, I can sit back and say, oh, good, job done. Well, that's not working the same way now that I'm working not just with value, but with temperature. I'm finding that I have a lot more mixing to do, a lot more layers, although I'm not one to put a lot of layers in a painting, two at the most. Because like I said, I want to use as few strokes as possible. So this is as far as I got in terms of what I would call blocking in the rose. Went away, let it dry, actually made some ravioli for lunch, and then came back. Also I should say that this is speeded up to 8 times as fast as I work. And remember, this is a small piece of paper, so this took quite a while to work on. So temperature is slowing me down, but I think that that's a good thing. Now I felt that my temperature choices were good, my value choices were good, but boy, I did not have brightness. And so I thought, oh, okay, in order to get brightness, I've got to put on another layer. I've got to get some real color in there. So that's what I did. Now I'm getting serious. See how those darkest darks, they're not violet, they're really mostly red. And I think if I had started with my darkest darks, I would have been right into the violets right away. And that would have made everything harsh. Which is okay, it's a choice, but that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to see if I could really discriminate those different shapes, even though it's complicated form. I just kept saying to myself, simplify, 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 simplify. Oh boy, simplifying is so much harder than just painting the way I regularly paint. But I'm hoping over time that this becomes a lot easier. It's got to, like most things, right? The more you practice it, the more easier it gets. That left-hand bottom corner was too dark. I wetted a clean paper towel and blotted that up. So I'm not sure what happens now. I think boy, I really don't remember, even though I just did it. I must have felt that things weren't red enough and punched up with some reds. But I also know that I still feel like my darks aren't dark enough. And right now I'm going in and putting them in. And what I'm actually doing is I put a bit of cerulean blue on the tip of my brush right out of the tube. And I'm going in and placing it in those areas. It doesn't really show up on on the finished picture. I wish it did, because the cerulean blue against the orange is really, really effective. And so I was really happy with that. So go ahead and paint a rose. Remember to keep the white to your paper white. Your paint's wet, mass for value, mix for color. And if you're watching this, then you probably have joined my YouTube channel, but at least half of you haven't. So please join my YouTube channel, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.